Calendar Girl, one of the first cases of gender-bending adaptation. Yes, one of, not the first, because some people count the 1960 Batman show's version of the Warden, whose name I don't remember, but he was a warden of a prison. You see, they were male on the show, but when they were brought into the comics, they were female. So that's a completely different case, as technically the comic was an adaptation of the character from the show. It went TV show, then comic. Calendar Girl, on the other hand, was based on a comic book character of the separate gender, that being Calendar Man. Therefore, I'm counting her as the first, but even if you don't, she's still considered one of the first, with her appearing in the new Batman Adventures in 1998. But before we talk about her, let's talk about the idea of gender bending as a whole. Then we'll get into Calendar Girl. Wait, I should have phrased that better. Then we'll talk about Calendar Girl. There. Now, gender bending into adaptations is something that is very controversial, and everyone has their own opinion on the topic. Personally, I understand the reason. And I don't mind it being done. In fact, sometimes including what we're talking about is, in my opinion, intended to be an update. Sometimes the previous gender of the character doesn't really work with the story that the writers of the show, movie, animated movie, or whatever is trying to display. Which can land or it can't. It really varies. An example of when something like this has happened when people don't really realize it is The Boys show. A show that gender bent a lot of characters. This was because a lot of characters in the comic were male, and the majority of the female characters were just barely used. Which is why the female and Queen Maeve both got a pretty big upgrade in the show. Well, the characters of Stormfront, Victoria Newman, Grace Mallory, and Madeline Stillwell were in the Boys comics male, but on the show they were changed to be female. All of which for different reasons. Stormfront was because the social media angle having a different side to things than Homelander would work better with a female character rather than a male character. Because if she was as big, strong guy like she is in the comics, it likely wouldn't as work as well. Victoria was for the father-daughter exploration between her and Edgar, along with there being another whole situation of you don't really want two of the same characters, as her and Edgar would feel the exact same if she was a man. Well, except for the powers, of course. Grace was also the same thing. They didn't want a character who was practically just another Butcher, because Butchers would be unique. So by gender bending the character, Grace was Greg in the comics, but Grace now allows the whole mentorship happening, but without having the character come across as a Butcher copy. Well, Madeline, I'm not entirely sure why she was gender bent. Likely the milk stuff, I presume. I wouldn't say it's to do with the flirtation with Homelander, as if you don't know, he's bi in the comics and is said to be also bi next season, or at least confirmed bi. So if Madeline was James Stillwell like she is in the comics, I don't think he would really have a problem with that. However, like I said, I'm pretty sure it's because of the whole weird milk things. The reason behind gender bending for adaptation comes from the fact that comics didn't really use many female characters back in the day. Even now, they still struggle to incorporate female characters. Especially for villains. Gender bending is something that usually happens way more with villains than heroes. In fact, in the 90s, there was a huge push for more female villains, which was also a result of some certain characters from the DCAU. Harley Quinn, Livewire, Roxy Rocket, Babydoll, Volcana, Redclaw, Inque, Nora Fries, if you count her as one, etc. Another thing about gender bending is often overlooked is that it happens both ways. Well, yes, typically it's male to female, but it also can be female to male. The first season of Batman would gender bend the character Jane Cartwright to John Cartwright. Jane Cartwright in the comics is Jane Doe. Somebody who is able to make masks out of faces. Like actual human faces, and puts it on her face and makes herself look like somebody else. John Cartwright on the show did the exact same thing, where he would be a recurring character that was also Alice's best friend, the main villain of the show. Or at least the first season. His female counterpart would be later name-dropped on the show as being from another Earth, which implies that Jane Doe is likely out there somewhere, just not the story we're telling includes her. This version of the character was actually never called John Doe, but Mouse. However, it's pretty obvious this is intended to be Jane Doe, the whole wearing skin, the last name, the John name being the standard male version of Jane, abusive family angle, etc. The change was likely done to have more male characters on the show, since the majority of the characters were female besides Luke and Jacob. Also, the whole mouse angle from Alice in Wonderland wouldn't really fit if John was Jane. Black Lightning would have Heatstroke a part of the show's Master of Disaster team. In Season 2, where the character in the comics is a female named Joanna, while on the show the character was renamed Joe and was now a man. Also, the character's gender for the comics would be kind of referenced. You see, Tobias and Cutter talk about which of the Master of Disaster members should send a message to the public. And Heatstroke was apparently the best choice, with Cold Snap not being ready. Well, Cutter says as a woman, she herself can testify that society won't take a woman seriously, meaning they can't send a new wave. I'm not entirely sure if this was meant to be a reference to Heatstroke being a woman at one point in the comics. I say at one point as a whole of the character, not at one point in the comics, because the character in the comics has always been a woman. Now, the reason behind why the character was genderbent, I'm not entirely sure as to why it was done. But my theory is because Heatstroke and Cutter seem to kind of be swapped. That's because Cutter in the comics is a man. But on the show, they were changed to be a woman. So my theory is they likely just swapped Heatstroke to be a man to even it up. But that's just my theory on it. There might not be any reason they could just chose a man because they wanted to. In the Flash, there's 2 fire villains. Just like Black Lightning did with their 1 fire villain. Is there a rule that says that women aren't allowed to have fire powers or something? The Hotness would be a recurring character in Season 9, as well as appearing prior in Seasons 4 and 8. Meanwhile, Heatmonger showed up for once in Season 3, now male unlike the comic counterpart who is female. Unlike the other 3, I'm not sure as why Heatmonger was changed to male. Well, for Hotness, I'm pretty sure it was by accident. Because unlike John Cartwright and Heatstroke, this version of the character, that being Hotness, on the show, doesn't bear any resemblance to the character in the comics. So in my opinion, this likely was just an accident because the name Hotness is pretty generic. So they probably just named the character Hotness only to find out that there was a female character in the villains of DC that it was also named Hotness. Also, side note, I also hate the name Hotness. It sounds very stupid. Now on the topic of Calendar Girl. I know it wasn't meant to get there, and I apologize for that, but I thought you guys needed all that context. Calendar Girl is a DCAU counterpart to Calendar Man. Specifically, the new Batman Avengers episode, Mean Seasons. She is Paige Monroe, and she's very different than a comic counterpart, Calendar Man. She was a model that used to get offers upon offers, but after a while they started to dry up, likely because of her age. She would end up trying to be an actress on some sitcom, but it would fail. And once it disappeared, so did she. There are rumors, Hollywood rumors, that she apparently was getting plastic surgery. However, in reality, she was plotting revenge on those companies that rejected her. Throughout the episode, we see that she is depicting herself as different seasons in seasonal outfits, along with henchmen. She would attack her employers on the anniversary of the contract expiring, hence the calendar theme. Her costumes would be a yellow jumpsuit with a sunny day skirt for summer, a cold black suit with a scythe for winter, the orange jumpsuit for fall, and my personal favorite, the simple green for spring. I thought it made her the most villainous, which is why I used it for the thumbnail. So, I personally think Calendar Girl is a character that feels very much as their attempt to do an update to Calendar Man. However, by doing this, you actually make Calendar Girl feel like a very different character than Calendar Man. Which isn't a bad thing. Calendar Girl, I think, is a very strong character, and a very strong villain. The whole idea that she's vain about herself and her appearance actually is something that I think a lot of people can relate to. And well, yeah, she very obviously inspired by Calendar Man as a character, and the whole invention of the character was to be an update of him. I think the character very much could stand alone in the comics, without Calendar Man. The two characters can be very separate, as both characters don't really feel like they're just a copy of one another. Instead, they feel very much like they're separately done. Now, I could see some people being upset by that idea, bringing Calendar Girl into the comics, because Calendar Man is such a, well, I wouldn't say icon. He is for the wrong reasons. But as a long Halloween fan, I personally really like the character, both as a serious villain or a goofy villain. But for Calendar Girl, I think the character really does shine in the episode she appears in. And well, yeah, she only appears in one episode, which is unfortunate. I think this version of the character very much could be deemed her own character, not just a variation of Calendar Man, but a different character altogether. And could very much, like I said, work in the comics. However, Batman has a very big rogues gallery, so perhaps giving her to another hero. Maybe Green Arrow. Or even Swamp Thing, because of the whole spring theme. Or maybe the kind of thing where she only fights specific heroes during those seasons. That itself could also be a really interesting idea. Like, maybe she only fights Batman in the fall. She fights Swamp Thing in the summer. Or it will actually make more sense if she fought him in the spring, I suppose. She fights Green Arrow in the summer, because of the archery. Okay, I'm making this up as I go now. Anyways, that's it. Like always, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. And thanks so much for watching. Bye!